Speculation surrounding the potential Switch Pro has been a hot topic for a long time now. Between the base system's hardware limitations, support for legacy content that stops at the Super Nintendo, Joy-Con drift, lackluster menu themes, and user interface, the Switch was always a neat system that had some room for improvement from the get-go, and I don't think most rational people would fight you on that. Then one day, finally, Nintendo drops a bombshell announcement on the 6th of July that they were making a new Switch model, and instead of fixing that stuff, they made the screen look better. The video game community has always been dominated by the hype machine, new announcements and releases left and right causing an uproar of excitement and chaotic energy. It's a very addicting feeling, and it often gets to the point that we hype ourselves up for things that might not even exist, or at least not in the capacity that we expected. Do you guys remember that tech demo for Zelda on the GameCube that turned out to be literally nothing, and then they made Wind Waker instead and everyone rioted? Yeah, this has been going on for a while. This is especially true today since a lot of us are still completely shut indoors with our extremely short goldfish level attention spans, and I think a lot of people agree that we often don't feel like we have a lot to look forward to these days, whether it's true or not. Real big announcements become old news very quickly as we continue to desperately chase the high we get off of hyped up new announcements, and it's gotten to the point that we start hyping ourselves up for something that maybe was never going to happen in the first place. Something we just imagined because the truth was going to be too boring. I remember before Origami King came out last year, leakers were saying, "Oh my god, they're making a new classic style Paper Mario game," and then it came out and it was like, ah, I see. They're not. You lied. For the record, Origami Bitch turned out to be a very solid game in its own right, but the leak-based hype around a classic-style Paper Mario game kinda killed my expectations from day one. So yeah, this does serious damage, guys. Like, it made me mildly upset for 2 days, and for that, you should all be severely punished. The announcement of the OLED Switch instead of the fictional Switch Pro that a lot of us were kinda hoping for is the latest and possibly greatest example of this phenomenon. Ever since the original system was launched in 2017, one of the most contentious topics surrounding it was the hardware. This thing was maybe like 15% more powerful than the Wii U, whose hardware was already remarkably underwhelming when it was released in 2012. Not to mention, by this point, you had the two giants, the PS4 and Xbox One on the other side, which were many magnitudes more powerful than the Switch and had already been out for 4 years at that point. The big selling point for the Switch, though, is the portability, and you don't have to be a computer engineer to know or at least guess that portable machines tend to be, on average, far less powerful than their home system counterparts. You do have to be ready to make compromises to make that hardware small enough to almost fit in your pocket, and that's not even to speak of the price point, which is undoubtedly increased by the built-in screen and the speakers and whatnot. But for a lot of people, that's a small price to pay for portability. The PS4 can play Doom Eternal, but only when you're at home on the TV. The Switch, on the other hand, can play it anywhere. You can play it on a plane, you can play it on a bus, you can play it on the subway, you can play it while driving and get into a fucking car wreck and kill 7 people. You get the idea. It's a handheld, and even 4 years on, that's still kind of a big deal, but it's also still bogged down to some extent by its hardware, and that's only becoming more and more true as time goes on and as games get more demanding. At least in the case of Nintendo themselves, their games aren't going for hyper-realism so much as a stylized, cartoonish look, which means that it's far easier for them to leverage the hardware into something that looks pretty in its own right, and I guess if you really wanted to, you could count each individual polygon in Mario Odyssey and then start a riot because a single character model in Cyberpunk has more polygons, but do you really want to do that? I mean, yeah, probably not. More raw computational power is a big thing that people dream of with respect to the possible Switch Pro. Digital Foundry has done more than a few in-depth technical analyses on multi-platform games, focusing sometimes on ports to the Switch. You got Witcher 3 looking like Genshin Impact or something, and the only good thing about that game in the first place is the graphics, in my opinion, so that's a bit of a deal breaker. But the Nintendo Switch can run actual fun games on the go too, like Doom Eternal and Wolfenstein: The New Colossus, but those are also very clearly the worst ways to play those games by far. This is not the optimal Doomenstein experience. Every single compromise that could reasonably have been made had to be made to run it in portable mode at barely 30 FPS. And even getting that good is considered by experts to be a technical achievement. funny thing is that in these videos, they even talk about the possible performance improvements that could come with a Switch Pro if one should ever exist.
It seems like a great candidate for an upgrade if a Switch Pro ever happens, however.
You are still getting to play it in portable mode, which is the big seller, but Doom Eternal is not even considered a particularly graphically demanding game on other platforms. Not every next-gen game is The Last of Us 2 and Red Dead 2, but even then the Switch is choking on these games, and they're only getting more demanding, so it's inevitable that it will no longer be able to run the newest games, even if multiplat devs did want to port them. And a Switch Pro probably wouldn't offset that by a massive margin, and it would be very temporary. On the other hand, you gotta understand that Doom and Wolfenstein are kinda exceptional when it comes to optimization and whatnot. Most devs are not gonna go to that kind of trouble. Like, not even Call of Duty goes on the Switch anymore, and they used to put that shit on the Wii. The Wii, dude. So, the fantasy Switch Pro of our dreams. Do I think it's gonna happen? Yeah, not really. Do I even care about a potential Switch Pro? Yeah, not really. But I gotta admit to some personal bias here. I don't really play my Switch portably. For me, I own the Switch purely for the express purpose of playing Nintendo's own exclusive games. I don't play video games in public because I'm ashamed of it, so I personally don't really give that much of a shit about how games run portably. Although they often don't run far too much better docked in that case, but I do know that that was a selling point for a lot of people, and when the newer multiplat games stop getting put there, that might be an issue. Again, most devs aren't going to go to that kind of trouble. A lot of them are already not doing that, except for occasionally porting some old games from 8 fucking years ago that you probably already beat 60 times. I feel like that kind of thing would be better suited to a fully blown Switch successor, which is honestly the thing that I would hold out for at this point over a Switch Pro. Let's be real here, Nintendo's Switch Pro would in all likelihood not be a generational leap so much as a medium-sized improvement, which would only delay the inevitable requirement to upgrade, and that's kinda how I feel about these intermediate console upgrades in general. From the beginning, this thing was not meant to keep up with these other consoles, but that's not why people buy Nintendo consoles anyway. People buy them because they don't put their games on any other platforms. Look at the Wii U. It is Nintendo's worst selling console besides the Virtual Boy, and it's still sold over 11 million units simply because it has Mario. You guys, the Nintendo Switch has games. As far as multiplats are concerned, I have a PC, I got a PS4, and maybe one day I'll be able to drop 710 Canadian dollars after tax on a PS5. Even if these multiplats were coming to the Switch, I would not get that version. I would literally get any other version, and I do not say that lightly. I am not getting a gimped version of Red Doom Revengeance Birth by Sleep just on the off chance that I want to play it on the fucking Go train someday that may never come. I know a lot of people won't agree on that, which is fine. That's kind of the beauty of the hybrid nature of the Switch, but that's a big reason why I'm not considering the new model either. The OLED screen is really the only big thing here, but I don't play this shit portably, and even then, that kind of thing isn't something that I care way too much about anyway. And this is coming from a man who used to spend his free time wandering around Best Buy and staring at all the televisions like some kind of cryptid. Which is to say that I do have some idea of what I'm missing out on, and honestly, I really don't care. Maybe if I had infinite money it'd be a bigger deal, but as of today, I don't. So it's not. I definitely would not blame you for buying the OLED Switch if it was your first Switch console. Like if you weren't an early adopter, then yeah, definitely get this one because it's slightly better. But at least for me, I can't really see myself buying this version because I already have a Switch that works perfectly fine. There isn't really a thesis for this video. The concept of a Switch Pro is just one that I think about every now and again, and I guess the recent announcement of the OLED Switch gave me an excuse to talk about it in some capacity, even though it's not an actual thing, but whatever. It's video games, and those are kinda cool, apparently. By the way, on a lighter note, I realized that I never really did anything for 2,000 subscribers, so I decided that I'm gonna try and do a little Ask Me Anything video because I haven't done one in a long time. It might not happen if I don't get enough questions, but if I do, then it totally will happen. So, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments or on the community tab on the channel page or even on Twitter where I'll probably see it first. Otherwise, thank you for watching.